Welcome back to another episode of The Conscious Artist, a safe space for conversations around mental health awareness for musicians, artists, and all human beings. I am your host, Pallavi Mahidara. I'm a concert pianist and teacher, and I am absolutely thrilled that you are joining us today. My hope for this show is that it will give all of us a sense of solidarity and knowledge that we are not alone, and together, through these conversations, we can create more awareness and change for a healthier future. My guest today is a professional actor and dancer with international experience. He has performed in Britain's Got Talent in the semifinals and is a founder of the popular Bollywood on Hollywood dance class series. He is a featured dancer in the new Marvel movie Eternals and is the lead of an upcoming film titled A Game of Two Halves. But more importantly, he is one of the kindest souls I've ever met, with genuine warmth and love for everyone he comes in contact with. And in my opinion, the energy he brings to the room, especially on the dance floor, is the definition of feeling alive. Please join me in welcoming my dear friend Saaj Raja to the show. Saaj, I'm so happy you are here with us today.
Hey Pallavi, thanks so much for such a lovely introduction. That's so sweet of you. I'm so happy to be here because you've been talking about this podcast, and so to be part of it is very special. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. Of course, you and I met in Hong Kong several years ago when I was visiting my sister and her husband. And at the time, you were working in the financial sector. Is that correct?
I was. I originally came to Hong Kong on a 6-month contract to work for a bank, an American investment bank. And at the time, I was only about 23 years old, so I was quite young to move out. And I thought, 6 months in Hong Kong at a big investment bank would be like just good for my CV. So I was thinking purely for my CV at that time. And life kind of took a hold. And 4 years later, I was still in Hong Kong with amazing friends and a career that I'd built in the finance industry. And I moved from working in a bank to becoming a stockbroker. And during that period, I still always had that creative itch. I've danced since I was a child, and it was my parents actually that encouraged me to set up my own Bollywood dance classes out in Hong Kong. So I used to teach classes on a studio on Hollywood Road. So my classes were called Bollywood on Hollywood.
Oh,
so the name,
okay, I get it
now. So the name stuck. It got like a lot of local coverage and national coverage. It was in the South China Morning Post, and even like so whenever a big Bollywood star would come to Hong Kong, we'd do a performance with them. I started doing gigs.
Wow.
So I was quite involved in the creative scene in Hong Kong at the same time, whilst having my finance career. And I guess the two kind of came to a head, and there was a fork in the road for me. And it was one of those moments in your life where, you know, the next couple of days of your life are going to take you in one of two directions. And those forks come from time to time. And I thought, if I go down this path, I'm here for a long time. And if I go down that path, it's the scarier path because I don't know what's at the end of that, but I know that I might not be able to access that at a future time. So I decided to pull the plug and relocate back to the UK and pursue a career that I've always wanted to as a child, but was kind of told that it's more of a dream than being potentially something you could, really go for. So I left Hong Kong after 4 years. I had a transformational 6 months in between. I didn't just jump straight into the world of acting. I did some deep introspection, had some life-changing experiences, and I kind of came back with a clean slate, both from the inside and out, and eventually moved into the world of arts as a career, which is different to doing it as a hobby.
Wow, that's amazing. Would you mind sharing, if you feel comfortable,
Yeah, of course.
what were those life-changing experiences?
Yeah, of course. So living as an expat in Hong Kong, I was 100 miles an hour probably 150, 24/7, working as a broker, was out all the time with clients, and the social life of a young expat in Hong Kong was also really full on. So I never really ever pressed pause. I think my whole life I'd never pressed pause up until the moment I decided to disconnect from that. So I came back to the UK, and actually before coming back to the UK, we had a very special wedding. It was your sister's wedding.
Yeah.
And that felt like the closing of the Hong Kong chapter, actually, because I flew straight from Hong Kong to Sri Lanka, had the wedding, and then came home. And then after that, I knew that I needed to answer some deep questions about myself, because I'd asked these questions. We all have these existential questions, like, why am I here right now? What direction am I going? And questions about my own identity, which I found difficult to answer. So I thought, I can't be an actor and portray the truth on screen and on stage if I can't answer these intrinsic questions about myself. So I'm not going to start my new journey until I know myself better than I do right now. So through a friend, I was recommended, and also my mum is a yoga teacher, so a lot of her students had talked about this meditation course retreat. It's called Vipassana, so it's a 10-day silent meditation course. And like I explained earlier, with the fork in the road, I had the option from I had been offered a dance contract to go and work in Morocco for a month, which sounded really, really cool on paper. It was good money, being put up in, the best accommodation and working out in Marrakesh for 1 month, or doing this 10-day Vipassana course. And I was on the wait list for the Vipassana course. And on the day I had to decide between which one to go with, a space opened up on the Vipassana course, and I went down in that direction. So it was 10 days, no contact with the outside world, no talking, and practicing a style of meditation that was taught by the Buddha himself 2,500 years ago in India, and which is basically a process of deep observation and introspection. And that was the first time in my life I'd sat within myself, with no distractions. And I came out of it. Well, I almost quit a few days in, but I stuck it out, and I came out on the other side of it with a newfound respect and admiration for those who before meditation for me was this outlandish hippie thing. It didn't appeal to me whatsoever. But during that experience, I scratched the surface of something which I wanted to delve deeper into when I came out on the other side of it. And that began the process of further exploration into spiritual practice, yoga, meditation. And 2 weeks after doing the Vipassana course, I traveled to India for a wedding. And my first night in India, I was in a car accident. So my friend fell asleep on the wheel of the car, and the car flipped over onto the other side of the road onto oncoming traffic, and that was the same day I'd landed in India. So it was quite a welcome to Delhi.
Oh my gosh!
And luckily, no one was hurt. We were completely fine. But I suffered a delayed onset of whiplash 2 weeks later. In between that, I also performed at my cousin's wedding, which
oh my God.
which, as you do when you go to an Indian wedding, you get asked to dance. After I performed at my cousin's wedding, I had this onset of whiplash, and my mum, through her network, she's an Ayurvedic practitioner. She said, "Why don't you get your neck fixed, here in India rather than bearing the winter in the UK?" So she found an Ayurvedic retreat, which I went and visited. And there was an option on the table there to have a full 21-day cleanse, like a detox. So where they completely, it's like having like a service or an MOT done on your body. They completely cleanse your internals and your organs through, it's an Ayurvedic practice called Panchkarma. So my life in Hong Kong, I can easily say I abused my body quite a bit through the experience of drinking and going out and the expat lifestyle. So I thought that this would be the perfect remedy or antidote to those 4 years. I thought it would at least set me off with a clean slate again physically. So I agreed to stay 21 days in it's a place in rural Gujarat called Nadiad. And my mum's cousin from one of the local villages who wasn't working at the time, he came and stayed with me. And he didn't speak a word of English. He only spoke Gujarati. And all the nurses in this hospital retreat, they all spoke Gujarati and broken English. So I had a crash course in Gujarati that month. I lost a ton of weight. I lost maybe 10 kilos, shaved my hair off, and came back to the UK the following January, almost like a new person, completely physically and internally transformed and cleansed. And I thought, okay, I'm ready to go out and be an actor now. It wasn't a good look though for acting auditions because I looked like Professor X from the X-Men or something. But I did feel like, okay, I've had this. It was an intense 6 months, which was out of my control. Experiences and circumstances led me down the path that I did go on. I just asked the question, how can I answer these questions about myself, and how can I find out, how can I sit with myself? And then the experiences just kind of arose through this Vipassana course and this 3-month experience in India. So that's kind of how I got into, I've not even delved on how I got into the acting, but that was the catalyst for like a lot of change.
Wow, what an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability. You know, your story actually reminds me of someone that I know we both idolize, Jay Shetty.
Yeah.
It sounds quite similar in a way. And I mean, I remember after the wedding that you had done the Vipassana retreat and that you had gone to India, but I don't think I ever realized how transformative it was for you.
Yeah. There is also a monk involved in this story as well, which I didn't include. But in my last 10 months in Hong Kong, I was invited to a bank networking event, and there was a monk who was going to be the keynote speaker. He's quite a famous monk. His name is Gaur Gopal Das. Yeah. So he was talking at BNP Bank. And that happened to be in the same building as my office. So the person who was organizing it invited me along. And I was asked to take photographs. Someone just gave me a camera and asked me to take photographs. So I was photographing the event. And at the end of the evening, he called me over and I started conversing with him. And he asked me where I was from, my name and that kind of thing. And he kind of discerned from all of that. And he looked at me and said, we've met before. Yeah, I remember we've met before. I came to your university, and I was like, it went straight over my head. I was like, have we really? And it really stuck with me because the way he spoke to me was as if we'd been friends for a very long time.
Wow.
So he invited me to another event that he was speaking at that weekend in Hong Kong before he flew off back to India. And I came home and I looked through my old laptop and I found I had this folder like BlackBerry photos. Remember the BlackBerry cameras? And I was like scrolling. I don't know what led me to do this, but I was just like scrolling through the pictures because that was my uni photos. And I found a photograph of me and him together when I was 18 years old.
What?
in London. Yeah. And I sent him the photo and he was like, yeah, see, I told you we met, we have met before. And we became friends as a result of this. And he was a big catalyst in like my spiritual like inquisition and I guess in my journey as well. So when I did go out to India before my Ayurvedic retreat, I flew through Mumbai and I went to visit him at the ashram that he stays at there, and I spent some time with him there. And from time to time, if I ever fly through India, I do try and see him. But I've made like a lifelong friend through this connection. So it's funny how people from a different chapter of your life can come back and influence and have such an effect on you. So yeah, it was like a synchronicity.
Okay, our listeners can't see my face, but I'm completely mind blown. Oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Literally, I feel like your story is like such a parallel of Jay Shetty's. And can we please like get him on my show?
We need to get him on, don't we? We need to get him on. We'll have to work on that.
I mean, his podcast, his book, his teachings, his journey really were a huge guiding force for me during COVID, during lockdown, during things happening in my personal life. Like along with my therapist, I was supplementing my, my inner homework, 24/7 inner homework with everything Jay Shetty. And yeah, this is incredible.
I think what resonates so much with people is the vulnerability. I think in terms of before, I think when we were kids, we were always told to be brave and be strong, and that was, don't cry. You have to fight through this. And I think what he's done, what Jay Shetty's done, has coincided with this movement of it's okay to show your vulnerability to the world, because that's really what connects us, because we're all going through these different social, moral, and spiritual difficulties every day. And rather than trying to mask them by acknowledging them, not just personally, but it's a difficult thing to do that publicly, especially for artists. Mm-hmm. By doing that, we actually endear ourselves to others, because people respect that authenticity.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, vulnerability is simply being your authentic self. Yeah. That's how I define vulnerability today. But I 100% agree with you that growing up, we were told, no, don't cry, don't be sad, don't be angry, don't be this, don't be that.
Yeah.
In an attempt to protect us, I think parents, teachers, friends, mentors, society, in an attempt to quote unquote protect us, we're told don't do these things. And then we're intrinsically taught that those are bad emotions. Don't feel those things, And that leads inevitably to disconnection from oneself. And I want to backtrack to something that you said earlier, which was, just you sharing your story about how you sort of had to take a hard look at yourself and ask yourself some really deep, important life questions in, I don't know, I guess around like in your 30s, basically.
Yeah.
Late 20s, early 30s. Yeah. And I feel the same way. I feel like I was asleep for my entire life until last year. Just living on autopilot, even though, of course, as an artist, we're always intentionally working on our art, but I don't feel like I was conscious of how I was living my life or the choices that I was making. Now looking back.
Yeah, you're kind of operating at this surface level, and it's like an autopilot, isn't it? The harder, the more you begin to look at yourself and your experiences through these different tools of whatever they are, of introspection, and through your art, then your work and your being takes on a whole new meaning, because you're operating from a place which is closer to your truth and authentic self. Because prior to all of that, it's all our conditioning, isn't it? That we're just replaying again as tapes.
What does society want? What do our parents want? What do our bosses want? What do our colleagues want?
And what have we learned? Yeah, we have this twisted perception of what we think others want of us and what we think others think of us as well. There's this theory or this analogy that, there's a million different versions of us out there in the world. Like there's like the Pallavi or the Saaj that like my mum and dad or parents see. And then there's like the version of us that our siblings see, the version of us that our colleagues at work see. And everyone has a different perception of who we are based on our responsibilities, our duties, and our relationships with them. And all of those inform who we think we are. That can make us build a picture which is either beneficial to our growth or not so beneficial, dependent on whether those relationships are not positive or negative, but whether they're truthful or untruthful. What I've learned the past year or two is the moment you stop looking for your identity through others and trying to find your identity through yourself is when you begin to like scratch on that surface of truth, because otherwise it's all different perceptions.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I definitely feel like I lived my entire life seeking external validation.
Yeah.
I didn't really know otherwise. And so I thought I had to have external validation in order to be validated. And learning in this last year and a half, how to trust myself, how to listen to myself, my body, my mind, my gut, my intuition, really asking, what is it that I want? What is it that I need? Because at the end of the day, no one else is in our minds. Only we are
Yeah,
in our minds and in our body. No one else can truly understand what is in our head, or no one else can truly feel what we feel in our body. We can relate,
of course, of
but it's
course.
not the same.
And even in your art, like you get up on stage and you perform all over the world, and you're every time you do that, you're leaving, a piece of yourself out there for others. And the moment you begin to derive your sense of validation and happiness, if you do that from those experiences, then if that ever stops, or if it slows down, or it changes, that relationship changes, then it can affect us in a way which isn't so beneficial. It's like that actors have that problem a lot, because that difficulty, we all face that challenge, because most of our job is rejection. Because most of the things you audition for, it's very unlikely that there's like a ratio. It depends on who you are as an actor, but most of the time our job is just auditioning, and sometimes not hearing back, and sometimes getting close to like the final audition, and then not getting that role. And then if your happiness is pegged on the outcome of that audition and you're getting rejected, then you need to find a sense of deeper purpose or meaning from your life experience.
I 100% agree with you. Perhaps classical musicians, it's a little bit less for us in terms of, I would equate, I guess, the auditions a little bit like to the competitions that we do, or for orchestral players taking orchestral auditions. I would say that's more related to actors taking auditions for roles. But yeah, I mean, I suppose it's what our purpose is going into the audition, going into the concert, going into the competition
Yeah,
that makes the difference,
yeah,
right?
yeah. There's so have you seen Breaking Bad?
No, I have not, but
You've
I
not
know
seen
about the
Breaking
show.
Bad? Okay, so there's the actor from Breaking Bad, Bryan Cranston. He talks about his auditioning process, and he's been acting for probably over 25, 30 years, and it's only in the last 10 years that he got his breakthrough. But you see the audition or your performance as something you're doing for yourself and not for whoever's watching. It's your performance to show what you have, and then it's take it or leave it. And you're doing that performance to express your own art and to have a good time. I think the trap that working artists can fall into, which is so easy, is like as soon as your work becomes commercialized, or you do it for a living or whatnot, then you're trying to find the value outside of what you're doing. Like your art, it depends on the validation of the external, and then it's something you're trying to sell, and not something you're performing from within yourself. So there's all sorts of techniques. Like I learned from someone recently, I used to keep scripts after an audition, and then that creates an attachment, because you're like, oh, that script is still lingering around, so maybe hopefully I'm gonna get that role. But I think his name is Abdul Yahya Mateen, the actor. He's in the US at the moment. But he, like, every time he learnt this from another actor, but every time he leaves the audition room, he puts the script in the bin straight away, because it's like on to the next thing. And whether you get that job or not, then you get it. But that kind of detaches yourself from that outcome.
I love that. And I think that a lot of us artists, musicians, actors, dancer, performing artists, right? A lot of us had to really take a step back and a really hard look at what was our purpose with our art, especially last year with COVID,
Yeah,
when
definitely.
everything stopped, all work stopped, all performance opportunities, to everything, the world stood still. And I wonder for you what it's been, first of all, how you, as a dancer, as an actor, as an artist, how you dealt with that and sort of the lack of work, and what has it been like going back on stage and back to work after so long? And does it feel different now? Sorry, those were three questions.
That's okay. We'll start with the lockdown situation. I just want to give you a shout out in that because you helped us get through it with some lovely Zoom concerts, which you played
Thank
for our
you.
family and friends all around the world. And I remember those felt so beautiful to tune into because we were just in our living rooms and in our house, and so to be able to tune into that was really really heartwarming. So that helped. I journaled a lot in the lockdown. I read a book. I was gifted this book twice actually, so I took the hint from the universe. It was a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. So I would highly recommend it. And one of the exercises in that book is a thing called morning pages, where as soon as you wake up, you just try and jot down 3 sides of A4 or as much as you want to. They say your brain has different frequencies of, I think it's alpha state, beta state, and theta. And I'm not sure which one it is. It might be theta, but when you're asleep or when you're about to fall asleep and when you wake up, that's when you're closest to your dreaming state, and that's when you're closest to your subconscious.
Mm.
So the idea of the morning pages is to kind of act as a channel. The pen and your inside acts as a channel to your subconscious, and you just kind of let whatever come out, and then that allows you to get out of your own way to be more creative. So I journaled a lot. I actually wrote a screenplay as well. I wrote a script for a TV show. I wrote a TV pilot script based on my grandfather's experiences growing up in
Wow.
Kenya. And I pitched it to a production company. I got a lot of feedback, which told me to go back to the drawing board, but it was an experience. And I've actually not touched the script in the last 4 or 5 months, but that was like my project. You know, I took to writing. So I was a journalist before I moved to Hong Kong. So I wrote a piece which was performed on a online scratch night. So it was like an online theatre performance, which was put on by a production company here in the UK on YouTube in the lockdown. So it was a way to connect writers and artists. And we did rehearsals over Zoom, and we did a YouTube like premiere. And I got to work with and meet a group of artists who I'd never met or worked with before. And we all connected purely over the internet through lockdown. And I guess we were all trying to search for meaning from being at home. So I found these kind of outlets, and for work, I was doing a lot of presenting stuff from home. So I was presenting online courses, and I think being a stockbroker previously has taught me to always be on the hunt and look out for opportunities. So I was trying to be as opportunistic as I could, but also taking time to do things creatively and explore parts of my artist self that I hadn't before. So I wrote a lot. I did attend a mental health call from one of the actors unions here in the UK, and you see a whole spectrum of how people were dealing with the lockdown, from I'm taking antidepressants and having like a really, difficult time. And a lot of people were lonely, especially people who lived alone,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
all the way through to, I'm part of different support groups and I'm journaling and I'm doing this and that. And there was a whole kind of tapestry of life across people dealing with it in different ways. But I'd say I think the biggest plus for me from it was I got to connect with almost more artists than I have when I say real life, I mean physically. I connected with a lot of artists online, because I think these new groups formed. So there's a South Asian group of artists here in the UK, and it's just through word of mouth. They've created a group online as a WhatsApp group, and and an Instagram page and stuff. And there's about 200, 250 South Asian artists on that now.
Wow.
And that wasn't there before the lockdown. So I think people found solidarity through, sticking together and finding each other. Being on stage, being on screen, that obviously has changed. The creative process has changed because intimacy is such a huge part of what we do. Not just physical intimacy, of course. It's like, being in the same space and rehearsing with another actor is different to doing it on Zoom.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
You can't transmit that energy in the same way. And being on film sets, I worked on some nice productions, but there was like a rule of, you can't take your mask off until the camera is rolling. So as soon as the camera cuts, everyone has their masks back on. And that skews the energy on set between people because you can communicate with your eyes, but we're learning now how much we rely on lip reading and that kind of stuff too.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm going back on stage in January and I'm performing in a play, which will be an experience that I'm looking forward to. It's a few weeks of rehearsals, and the play is called I Couldn't Do Your Job, and it's about how first responders and paramedics in the NHS here in the UK, how they deal with their mental health and the trauma of being a first responder, and how my character, for example, he uses dark humor and comedy as a way, as a coping mechanism for some of the experiences he's had. So
Wow.
that'll be an interesting project and a great thing to delve into, because we're only giving the value to our National Health Service here in the UK in light of the pandemic more than ever before. But they do a lot of work.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's amazing. What a great play. What a great topic. And you mentioned something earlier that I want to backtrack on, which is about energy and the live energy that exists between people. And that's definitely something that was a huge struggle for me. Thank you so much for saying that the few, Zoom online performances that I gave were helpful, because for me,
They were.
I'm so happy to hear that, because they were very strange for me. I remember the first online concert that I did last year, I felt so uncomfortable because, I've got a computer on my right, but it's mute. Everyone that's on the call is muted. So you don't hear anything. So half of your brain is just worried about if the connection is stable and if people are still there, or if you're like playing to an empty,
Yeah.
And for me as an artist, as a performing artist, I feed off of live energy. Having a live audience and the intangible connection that you feel with the people that are in the hall. And I'm curious to know how the process is different for you. For example, I don't know if you had to do like auditions on Zoom, or you would have to just record and send tapes instead of actually auditioning live, and how that's been different for you.
So I completely resonate with what you're saying about feeling the energy of the audience. In fact, that's probably the greatest contributor to my growth as an artist, because from the age of 4 years old, I was put on stage. My dad taught me a dance and I performed at my local Diwali show in front of 250 people. And then that became an annual thing. And being on that stage and being able to perform in front of a live audience gave me confidence as an artist and something I loved it. I loved it as a child, getting up on stage and performing. And I saw my parents do the same, because they used to dance and put on plays locally. It's a shame that doesn't happen as much anymore. In my town locally, there's a new artist initiative which has just started up called Creative Crawley. And we've just received £1 million funding from the Arts Council, which is amazing. So that's going to be put towards creative initiatives locally, because I'm part of a group of people that wants to give children an opportunity to showcase their artistic talents, and also to support and nurture artists who are budding and growing, but they need that push or that safe space to be able to go out and perform. If I wasn't given those opportunities to go on stage at Diwali shows, I wouldn't have confidence to be doing a Britain's Got Talent semi-final or performing like on these other stages that I have later in life. I'm a big believer in that. But now it's changed completely, the process of if the audition process as an actor, you have to record a self-tape. So self-tapes are the way in now. You'll record a self-tape, and then if they like you, you'll be invited to a Zoom callback. They call them callbacks. So you'll meet the director or the casting director. And then sometimes there's a next process, which is a chemistry read, where you're invited into the room because they test the chemistry with you and other actors. So when I auditioned for A Game of Two Halves, that was pre-pandemic. And the final stage of that audition process was a chemistry read. But the way I auditioned for that film was interesting as well, because I applied for the script reading. I saw a call out saying, we're looking for actors for a script reading, which is very, very, very early stages of development in a film. They just want to hear how the script sounds in a room, and they hire actors to do the reading. But it doesn't mean you're going to get the role. So I read the script for the lead part, and I was told that the director liked me, and I didn't hear anything for 3 months. And I was traveling to India that month, and I thought, oh, what if I miss the audition? So I emailed the team and I said, I'm going to India next week. I hope I don't miss the auditions. I just want to let you know, like, these are my dates. And obviously they emailed me back saying, oh, hey, the auditions are actually next week whilst you're in India. And
Of course,
I
right?
was on yeah, of course. I was on a bus at the time, and I was like, no, I have to audition. I have a vision board at home, and I stuck the NDA that I signed, and I'd written a note underneath saying, you are going to play Sanjay in this film. Which is the only project this is the only project I've ever done that for, actually. I've not done it for any project since. Maybe I should. But I called up the writer. I had the writer's contact. And I called her up and I said, you need to try and help me organize a meetup with the director, because this is on my vision board and I want to play. I see myself playing this role, and I'd hate to not have even a chance to audition like properly. So please, could you make it happen in some way? So the director got in touch with me. The only day he could meet me for an audition was the day I was flying to India. So I was like, okay, no, I played it cool. I was like, no worries, we'll make it work. So that morning I went to my drama school. I was part-time attending a drama school, then left that, got changed on a train to where he was, which was in Wimbledon, the outskirts of London. And he could only meet me in a pub. So I ran to this pub and I gave my audition in a pub. Which was like around the corner from the bar. There were these sofas, and he just sat on the sofa and he was like, okay, do the scene. So I was in a pub in the middle of the afternoon. There was like people having a drink and whatnot, and I did my audition. And then a few weeks later I got called back for a chemistry read, and then I was the only person in the whole process, the only actor who didn't have an agent. So I was completely out of my depth, and then I got offered the role eventually. So that was just through a bit of resilience and pushing through that resistance.
Yeah, wow.
And perseverance. Yeah. And 3 months later I was in India shooting this film, which was such an experience. It was a baptism of fire. But now there's pros and cons to doing a self-tape, because you can do as many takes as you like until you get the perfect one, but that can also drive you crazy. Exactly. So I've been in that position where I've done 60 takes for an audition.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, my poor brother. He only did 57 of them with me, and then he was like, nah, I'm not doing any more. And my mum jumped in and she did like 3 with me, and I ended up sending one of those.
Wow.
But now I'm at a place where I don't do more than 4, max 5. I do 5 takes, and if I've not got it in one of those, I wouldn't have got it in the audition room. So I save myself, that headache, and I do like a couple of takes. Whichever one is best out of those, I send off. I think it's beneficial to actors now because there's a wider pool that casting directors can choose from, because everyone has a camera at home. Mm. Everyone has, the potential to connect to a project more than they did before.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that, what you said before, that if you haven't gotten it in 4 or 5 takes, you wouldn't have gotten it in the audition room. I think that's very important. That's a very important gauge of where we are in our preparation, or how we feel with whatever it is, the character we're auditioning for, or the piece that we're performing, or
100%. I think you hit the nail on the head with the word preparation. That's our job. I'm learning more and more and more. I think we can learn. We live in a world now where we have access to the greatest artists in the world, we can pick their brains. We can listen to their podcasts. We can read their books. We can YouTube what their processes are, and we can assimilate that information, and, you know, we can tweak it so it's unique to our experience. But preparation is absolutely key. I did an audition recently where I had to speak 2 languages, change accents, and harm himself in a way by the end of the scene, all within the space of 2 pages. And I thought, how am I going to do that? I'm like, how? Just having preparation and leaning on people around you. I lived in Asia for 4 years, so one of my old bosses was Korean. So I asked her to send me the voice notes for Korean translation. So she helped me with that. And just preparation and preparation. And I ended up only doing 3 takes of that audition tape, and I just sent it off. So yeah, I think having that space to prepare, it takes the pressure off of us when it's time to perform. I've been in that position where I've performed without preparation, and, you know, you can get away with it sometimes, but, you know, you feel almost dirty afterwards because, you know, you've not like done your work.
No, definitely. And I think preparation is not only, for example, at the piano, it's not only practicing, learning the notes, feeling comfortable with the music, memorizing the score. It's not only that, it's everything around it. And bringing this back to mental health, how we feel mentally and physically in our bodies makes a huge difference with how we actually are able to do our art. To be honest, I feel like COVID actually helped to shed light on the importance of mental health awareness. I hadn't even thought about going to therapy before 2020. It just wasn't on my radar.
Yeah.
And I keep saying, like, I don't know what I did for the first 33, 34 years of my life. I have no idea what I was doing. Because I was just like walking around blind asleep. And I'm so thankful in a way for this becoming a mainstream topic.
You acknowledge that vulnerability within yourself, though, to then go out and seek guidance on it. And that's a big step.
Thank you. I mean, the more awareness and knowledge and wisdom that I gain from all these amazing mentors in my life are also, all of this is helping me to learn myself better, trust myself better, be able to take more risks. I feel like I lived my life in fear most of my life. I feel like every decision I made came from a fear-based place. And well, this is a great segue because it actually leads me to my last question, which is about risks versus choices. And I know that you almost signed for a Netflix show and decided at the last minute that it wasn't the right decision for you. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because, you know, declining a big job after COVID, after not having a lot of live work, and, you know, that's a big risk to take, whether you choose to go for something or you choose to not go for something. It's a risk, but it's also a choice. So I'm just curious about that experience for you.
I think so. I got into talks with this big production 6 months ago about taking part in their show, which was, I can say it's like a docu reality type series. So it wasn't a film or a TV show or anything. But I kind of entertained the idea because I thought it would give me great exposure, and it could lead to other big opportunities. You know, the more people know about you, the more doors it opens invariably. So it got to the final month of conversation, and I looked at the contracts and I realized that this wasn't how I want to announce myself to the world. And I don't know if this is going to do my long-term acting ambitions and artistic ambitions any favors. What it is going to give me are all the byproducts of what I'm looking to achieve, which I suppose is being renowned, having your name out there. It would have given me probably fame, a lot of commercial opportunities, which would have been quite lucrative. But I think the moment, I mentioned it earlier, these forks in the road, usually the first instinctual feeling we have from our gut is the correct one. So when I was approached about this opportunity, I wasn't excited. I didn't feel like that pang of excitement, like, oh wow, this is something. It was like, oh, this is happening, but this isn't how I expected it to happen, or how I kind of envisaged it to happen. I spent a week deciding what I was going to do, and I asked a lot of people's advice in the industry. But essentially, what I was doing was asking for validation of my decision.
Exactly. Wow.
So I decided to turn this opportunity down, which would have meant probably overnight fame, but I wouldn't have maybe kept my artistic integrity, and I also wouldn't have had any sway on my portrayal on screen. The reason I do what I do is because since I was a child, I've enjoyed emotionally affecting people and making people feel good through my performance and through my expression. And signing up to an opportunity which could portray that in the wrong way, or which might not do that justice, and which gives me no control over how I'm going to be portrayed, is going against like my child self. So I turned this opportunity down, which was a kind of a big decision, but I know that for the long haul and the direction that I want to go in, opportunities always arise, and I just have to keep myself prepared for the next one. And invariably, it's only around the corner. I've had so many incredible opportunities in my life through the kindness of other people, through moments of serendipity and synchronicity. It's this frequency and it's this abundant channel that we can connect into anytime we want, and it's always there. Julia Cameron talks about it in Artist's Way. It's beyond our three-dimensional perception, but there are always so many synchronicities and instances in my life where there are too many signs or symbols for it not to be, something from the ether. And I think as artists, that's what we follow. They're almost like breadcrumbs. So I decided, decided not to, and invariably, a couple of weeks later, I got offered a lead role in a play. I have my film coming out next year, and one of my acting teachers, he was head of acting at Identity School of Acting, which I attended in London. When I got offered this role in the film, I had to make a decision. Then I had to cut my training short. So I said, I don't want to leave this school, but I have to go and do this film. What should I do? And he was like, how old are you? And I said, I think I was 28 at the time. And he said, everything you do between now and 35 or your mid 30s is just training. Like it's just training, and you're meant to hit your peak by the time you're 35, and all the mistakes and lessons you learn in between them are part of your training. Denzel Washington also says, you don't want to fall back. People say you should fall back on something. Like, you don't want to fall back. You want to fall forward, because if you're not falling forward, you're not taking a risk. And if you're not taking a risk, that means you're not going to fail. And if you're not failing, it means that you're not trying, because failing only happens when you try. It doesn't happen when you just take the easy route. So taking risk is really, really important. Of course, it's like walking on that invisible step. The reward is always on the other side of that risk, and it can be terrifying, which is why it's important to have a strong foundation in yourself, your family and friends, like-minded artists, your creativity. When you develop a strong foundational relationship with all these different elements, then taking that step forward and falling forward, it becomes a bit more tolerable and less scary.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing this. You hit a key word earlier, integrity. And I just want to say how much I respect you as an artist and as a human being for
Thanks, Pallavi.
acting from integrity, acting from your values, making your decisions from your values, because that is, and again, this is just a personal thing, but that for me is the most important thing, to know what our values are and to act from them. And that's how I also feel as an artist. It's not, I never cared about being rich or famous. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
But I want to be a well-respected artist. I want to make a difference in this world. And I want to if I can even help one person feel something beautiful through my music, through my art, or even through these conversations, help one person
Yeah.
feel less alone, that's what makes it worth it for me. And I just love and appreciate when I meet people, as you say, like-minded people. And I feel so fortunate to be surrounded by so many incredible, inspirational people like yourself. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your stories and your wisdom.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pallavi. You're actually one of my creative inspirations. Seeing what you do,
Oh my God.
yeah, seeing what you do on stage, seeing you perform. I've been lucky enough to see you perform live in Sri Lanka as well, and it's one of the most beautiful performances I've ever seen, and it still always stays with me. So I always enjoy seeing you perform, whether it's on a Zoom concert or at a wedding, and I hope that I can see you on stage one day, because I'd absolutely love to. And what you're doing by opening this forum up to other artists to have discussions, you're creating a safe space for us to just be, which is really, really important. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening. I am truly grateful for the support from each and every one of you. If you would like to submit any questions or topics for us to address on the show, you can send us a message on our Instagram page at Conscious Artist Podcast. Help us to spread more awareness by sharing this episode with your friends, your colleagues, your teachers, and your students. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Sending you all so much love and strength to tackle this week, and we'll see you next Monday for another episode of The Conscious Artist.